Hi, everyone. It's Courtney Edmond here again with To Tame the Shame Parenting, and I am here today to talk about a very hot topic of our children and screens, electronics, and how we get them to learn to self regulate and to do the other things in life that are simply not as exciting to them as their screens, as their phones, as their iPads, as their video games, whatever format they play in. And so I wanted to start off by mentioning that part of what this information is informed by is from having heard this summer at a conference a woman, social skills expert named Caroline McGuire, who's written a number of books about children and teens and social skills, shared when she was talking about this very topic that is so challenging for all of us as parents of kids growing up in the digital age. And it was so interesting to hear her say, for so many years, we have fought the battle to limit screens and to not understand it and not join in. And instead, what she advocated for was it's here to stay. And I have to agree with her, right? It's these screens, videos, they're not going away. And so what she advocated for was to join in and start learning about it and treat it similar to how we treat being involved in our kids' other activities and the other activities that our kids are involved with. So the more that we know about it, the more conversant we can be, the more we can understand where they're coming from, and we can learn with them. We can learn alongside them, and we can join in their part of their life that is screen-based that we haven't previously understood and only wanted to control. And so that's part one, is when our kids are spending time on screens, just join them, sit down, have a conversation with them about it. What are you watching? Take interest. See where you can find commonalities to join in their hobby, which effectively is what these are most of the time. It's just not what we necessarily grew up thinking of as hobbies, although I certainly spent plenty of time on my Atari playing Space Invaders and I forget, Froggy, I think it was called, or Frogger, and Pac-Man when they came out. We just didn't have the number of screens that these kids have access to. So that's part one, is get interested, join them in the screens, play with them, see, so that you can have conversations about it rather than having it just be a battleground. It might be surprising what they think, like, when you join in them. It might be interesting to see what their response is. So that's part one. Part two is how do we help them transition off, and how do we help them learn to self-regulate? So it's going to be different depending on the stage of life that your child is in. So for children who are elementary and middle school aged, I really do think that there needs to be a little bit more parental limit setting on how much screen time. However, rewards and consequences don't typically work. So I do think that it's important to have a conversation with our kids, no matter their age, about what the goal is and why it's important. But it's also important to hear out what our kids have to say. Why is playing video games, why is screen time important to them? And what are their ideas for how to transition off when the time is come to transition off? Do they need a visual timer? Will they need to come off after a certain game ends? I know that there are times when kids will be punished for leaving a game early. So it's taking that piece into consideration, which always helps to know more about the game, right? So setting timers and getting them to transition off to something else, pairing with something else that they're going to look forward to, so it's not coming off and going to homework, or so that it's not coming off and going to bed, but pairing it with something that they transition into that's enjoyable for them, like reading a book with you, or finding a way to help them transition off. It could be a number of ideas. Like I said, the visual timers, there are preset timers that will turn the game off. So it's the game turning off, not you turning it off. And those, I encourage for younger kids, because they may not yet have the ability, nor are they developmentally working towards in the same way as older kids are going to need to if they're going off to college or to live on their own in a couple of years, learn to self-regulate. So when we have older kids, so I'm okay with the kind of the superimposed time restrictions with kids who are a little bit younger. I'd say, middle school age and younger. It's just a fact of life sometimes that we need those. And then as they're transitioning into high school years and moving ever closer to college, I do believe that having a sit-down conversation about, look, you are getting to be moving towards more and more independence. I know that your screen time is important to you. But I'm also curious about what are the other goals that you have in life. Do you it's a reality that at 18, you will start to be responsible for certain things in life, whether it be going to college, whether it be joining the military, whether it be getting a job. And I'm curious what your thoughts are right now and where you see yourself. And what will you need to be able to do at that time? And depending on the age and stage, whether they're freshman or senior or junior, can guide how much independence you give them in this, whether or not you take away their phones or whether or not you leave them with their phones. Because eventually, if they go off to college and they've never had to manage phone use or screen use without you superimposing limits, it's going to be really challenging for them to provide any level of self-regulation when they get to college. So I think that it's really helpful for them to begin to learn that when they are still living at home. And so I don't advocate for taking their phones away, for limiting screens too much. I really advocate for having these conversations with them about what their goals are, what their obstacles for achieving those goals, what your expectations are, so that your values are contributing to the conversation and are represented, and your expectations are represented, because they are still a part of your family and they are still under your roof and you are still the parents. And so it's naming expectations. It's validating that you recognize that it's important to them. It's a priority for them. It's something they find enjoyment from. But it also comes with a responsibility, and you want to teach them the skill and support their ability to use those wisely while also meeting the other expectations and responsibilities that they have as a part of your family, as a student, as somebody who might be also working, and to bring that into the bigger conversation about, all right, so the goal is, that we meet these expectations, that you do this. The goal is also that you have time for screen time, that you have phone use, that you can play video games. How are we going to make all of this happen? And how can I support you? And I also, in another video, I believe, have explained how to use my GOSH approach. So GOSH stands for G for goals, O for obstacles, S for strategies, and H for help. And so you really outline what the goals are. What are the obstacles getting in the way of being able to transition and regulate screen time? What are the strategies that you as a collective, the kid and you together, will be using in order to regulate that screen time? And obviously helping them move towards greater and greater independence. Maybe one of the goals is, that, or one of the strategies is that they will become responsible for waking themselves up, which shows that they're responsible for putting that screen to bed. Or maybe there's a separate goal that they're getting up. And if they're getting up, it's showing that they are being responsible. Or maybe their grades are moving from C's to B's. So there are a bunch of different pieces that can be at play when looking at the larger picture of screens. Because we're looking at independent skills, we're looking at, can they manage the rest of their life responsibilities while also becoming more and more independent? Are they able to participate in the family? So there are a lot of pieces that kind of sit behind their ability to regulate screens. How is it interfering with the rest of their lives? Are they aware of that? Having a conversation about how it's getting in the way of the rest of their life can be an important piece to helping them realize how it's getting in the way, because they may not recognize and be able to put two and two together, because they live in the present, they live in the moment, they don't necessarily reflect without support. So that's something that I encourage you to do, is use this GOSH approach and have a conversation about what your goals and expectations are, not just with phone use, but as it relates to the larger picture of how are you trying to help this emerging adult, this young person who's moving ever closer to independent adult life, and not living in your home necessarily, who's going to be responsible for so many things independently if they are to go to college or they are to go live in a separate place from you. How are they going to build those skills gradually and become aware of how to manage all of those responsibilities, including regulating screen time? And how can we be a part of that process with them at home together? And that is why I only, as a very, very, very last resort, believe in taking those phones away, because we have to learn how to live with them. And so part one was join them, learn about it, be conversant about it, just as if you were to talk with them about learning a musical instrument or playing a sport. See how you can learn and join with them in the activity that they enjoy of video games or watching YouTubes or TikToks or whatever it is that they might enjoy. And then see how you, as a part of a larger conversation, can help them learn to move towards ever more independence in incorporating screen time into the larger picture of their everyday life responsibilities, obligations, commitments, and such. And see what they have to say, and then implement it. Review it. Say, okay, we're going to try this for a week. See how it goes. What does success look like? How are you measuring it? What will happen when they achieve it? What happens if they don't achieve it? And rework it and come up with what's continuing to get in the way. How do we address that obstacle and that constant cycle of what's working, what's not working, what's getting in the way? How am I being successful? Builds that internal motivation and that process of keeping a growth mindset on how to learn and how to reach goals. So I hope this was helpful. And if you have any comments, please leave them in the comments. And I look forward to seeing how this might help you in relationship with your child and maintaining the connection with your child, even in this digital world where screens exist and are part of the reality. Take care. Bye.